And we're live. Good morning, Joe. How are you today?
Good morning, Lauren. Yeah, I'm great. Thanks. Nice to see the sun shining where we are. Is sun shining with you?
Yes, and you've had a long weekend at your end.
We have. We're back after the bank holiday, so lots of ice cream and walks in the sunshine.
Oh. And so we're here today to talk about creativity, because creativity and the confidence to be creative, to express your creative self, is something that both our organisations have in common. So I'd love us to begin by asking you to tell us, who are you? What is 64 Million Artists? And yeah, what mission are you on?
So I'm Jo, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of 64 Million Artists. And we believe that everyone is creative, and that when we are creative, we can make change in our lives and in the world around us. So we're kind of really interested in what happens when we light that little magical spark of creativity, and how it can help us have more confidence, connect to people, feel motivated and excited about what we want to achieve in the world, and how we can do that work with other people. And we do that in loads of different ways. So we run big public creative challenges like the January challenge, which about 50,000 people do each year, and work with communities and organizations up and down the country to kind of set these little sort of 5 or 10-minute challenges for people to sort of wake up their day and have sort of participate in the world in a different way. And we also do loads of other stuff. We do work in sort of leadership and with sort of co-creating with communities around creativity. So yeah, for us, it's very much about that little thing that you can do every day, sort of creativity as a practice, I suppose.
And 64 million, tell us where that comes from.
Well, when we started the organisation 10 years ago, that was the population of the UK. And I think it really came from the idea that I think I'd worked in the sort of formal arts sector, and it felt very much it's sort of some people are creative and some people aren't. And that really felt wrong and kind of elitist. And this idea, to me, there's this brilliant dictionary definition of creativity, which is the ability to transcend traditional rules, ideas, and patterns and make new ones. And to me, when you say, some people are allowed to do that and some people aren't, that goes way beyond just saying some people are bad at drawing. And actually, it's like that is an inequitable way of kind of looking at society. So we're really interested in that idea of kind of how giving ourselves permission to be creative kind of creates a more equitable society, gives everyone a chance to kind of participate in their own way.
And there's so many parallels with confidence, because we see the exact same thing happen with confidence, where we grow up thinking, well, some people have it and are it, and some people are not. Whereas in fact, both things are practices and things that you can learn. It's a skills, they're skill sets, essentially. Like, where do you think that comes from, this kind of binary, we either are creative or we're not?
I think, it's often a way, creativity is one of those things, isn't it? Like confidence, that it's hard to measure, it's tangible. I think one of the things we're always battling with is, how do we talk about this in a way that feels, that is well researched and has evidence, but also not wanting to kind of crush it from what it is, which is a kind of a feeling and a thing. And I think often as humans, we're kind of geared to be a bit of afraid of the intangible stuff. We want to be able to kind of say, I'm good at this, or I'm bad at it. I like this, or I don't like it. And certainly that's something that we see, don't we, happening at the moment more and more, I think, in society. So for me, certainly, as I was growing up, and I think for most kids, I think all kids, and depending on the environment they're born into, we want to explore and play and make up new stuff, and it's just so natural to us. And then as we grow up, this binary stuff comes in, and we think, oh, well, I'm, especially at school, well, if I'm not good at that, then there's no point in doing it, rather than, well, I find this fun, or I'm curious about this, I'm interested in it, and I might have a go. And so I think quite quickly that then turns creativity into something that's much more about excellence. And actually, to me, creativity is kind of the antithesis of excellence. Like, as soon as we start pursuing excellence, often our creativity goes out of the window. And again, probably is that same thing. If we're trying to be confident, if we're trying to be a sort of vision of, you know, I suppose confidence and success, people often think of as going in hand, whereas actually that pursuit of success, I think, can often undermine our confidence. And actually, when we can just be confident being us, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah. And there's so much power in that beginner's mindset that you mentioned. It's like doing something even though you're not good at it, and doing it to taking part in something where the end goal isn't always to become good at it, I think becomes increasingly difficult as you get older. And I always talk about there's an example that Tara Moore, who is a kind of thought leader around women's progress and confidence and courage, and she tells a story of, like, if you imagine a young girl building a den, you know, who's like, she's 4, 5, the age my son is now. It's like she's so immersed in building this den, has like such a vision for how she wants it to be, and she's in there and she's finding the things and building the shapes and asking for help, and, you know, encouraging other people to join in. And at no point in that scenario does she see this den as an extension of herself.
Mm.
And at no point is she thinking, how are the people round about me judging me on the quality of this den?
Yeah.
It's such a good example of the difference between childhood and adulthood, because if we imagine, you know, when we are building our dens, whether it's a LinkedIn Live or a blog post or an organization or a team meeting, we can get so consumed by fear of what other people will think of that den that we don't make anything.
Yeah.
And it's so heartbreaking that I think particularly women, because we are trapped in this never quite right place where we're either too much, too little, too smart, not smart enough, you know, too thin, too fat, whatever it might be. And so you're stuck in this trap of, whatever I do, it's going to upset somebody somewhere, so maybe I shouldn't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, it makes me so sad, you know, like, for me, my too much is definitely the kind of too big, too loud, too, you know, showy offy, or, you know, because I was a confident, happy
Yeah.
kid who did makeup stories. And it's really interesting. So I also have a son who's 4.5. He's very similar, I think, to what I was at that age. He's always dancing, always making up a show. He's, you know, and it's so lovely to see. And it is interesting that to sort of look at how, you know, how you, I can remember people sort of saying about me, oh, that's great, but also just be quieter, be smaller, don't get in other people's way. And, you know, obviously important to be aware of the space you're taking up, but also for me, very much, I shrank and shrank to the point where I was very good at kind of taking the good element, that what society perceives to be the good elements of that, and managing them into being a kind of successful person. But actually my confidence then also completely was interlinked with how good I was being at that version of myself. And so as I, you know, I did very well at getting good jobs and, you know, having a good profile and doing that thing, but inside was sort of constantly anxious because there wasn't, that confidence wasn't based on anything to do with kind of me and what my creativity was and what I was putting in. It was all about what version of myself am I for these people around me. And so that, you know, that led me to essentially having a bit of a breakdown, you know, serious panic attacks, because I'd just sort of been carrying around and not even really noticing, to be honest, this kind of day-to-day anxiety. And then what helped me was reconnecting with my creativity, and that daily tiny practice of thinking, actually, I'm going to try this and I'm going to fail and it's going to be rubbish, and then that'll be okay. Or I'll try this and I'll discover this, and I'll try this and I'll meet this new person, and I'll go to things that I'm not immediately going to be good at, which I never did. You know, I think that for me, it's such an incredible gift to give yourself, to say, I'm just going to do this just for me, and I'm going to have a go at it again and learn to remember what I like about myself and what I want to put out in the world, I suppose. What was your relationship with your creativity like?
I mean, actually I'm struck by the similarities, because I think, I was similar, and when I was really wee, like very loud and always dancing, singing, inviting everybody to my performance, was like, loved being in the spotlight and telling stories, and I think like leading, I think I can now see there was the like, oh, she's a bit bossy thing. And then as that progressed into high school, that became like, who does she think she is? How dare she think she can be XYZ? And so there was a lot of bullying. And I think for me, I remember my mom and I often talk about this because she remembers. I remember asking her, really vivid memory, where I said to her, can I be an artist and a newsreader at the same time? And I remember her saying, yes, of course. Like, it's that thing of you can be all the things. But I think for a long time I felt tension between being extremely creative. Art was I went to art school, I studied product design. Drawing and painting was my first kind of step into that creative practice. Then I discovered design, and that was like, you can make things and building models. And I can see now that the fundamentals of that are what make me great at building businesses and starting the things that I've started. But I think even now, I still feel this. I don't know if it's tension or if it's a pull, that there's still a part of me that's quite underserved. I think like the artist in me that wants to draw and sketch and paint and create. It's that thing of like, well, something has to give. And right now there doesn't. Well, I'm choosing not to prioritize that at this time. But often when I like the conference we ran recently, we hosted our very first in-person conference in Glasgow, which of course Sam, who's here, was at, and was fabulously creative in all the ways she always is. But I was really struck by somebody, my friend Lorna, who was there, kind of spoke to me afterwards and said, that was a piece of art, like what you just painted.
Yeah.
And I was kind of really like touched by that word choice. It feels like and I see that so much in a lot of the women who are joining Bond 7. I was connecting with one of them yesterday who is a photographer, and she's in this place of like, am I really a photographer? Can I call myself a photographer if I don't get paid? And I see so many women who are stuck in this wanting their art and their craft to be validated by something external, which I think is a very normal reaction to our society and how the narratives around art and being an artist is structured. But at the same time, it's also so sad because really, and I wonder how can we help each other with that? Like, how do we help break those norms that we see in society and help people claim their art, claim their artistry in a way that feels good and right for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting with art because it's such a sort of hot topic and a word that kind of brings out, it has a really specific connotation to lots of people. To me, the thing that is interesting, and again, it's funny because there's always, even within the arts world, for example, there's such kind of hierarchy about what is art, what is craft, what is design. And I love that idea that a conference is art, that I feel like we're all works of art in ourselves. And I think that to me, there's something about the word art which conjures up for me this kind of vision of being absolutely yourself in the world without purpose, without having to please or put in a box or say it's for this, but to say it's because I'm beautiful and I'm bold and I'm there. That's who I am in the world. I'm a work of art. I don't have to exist to have a function. I don't have to exist to be this. I just have to exist to be me. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in, when we talk about when we're kind of encouraging people to kind of use creativity to get into a problem or just for fun or to solve something or to work together, it's always about bringing that element of equity, but also bringing that element of, how do you bring more of yourself to this room? Like, rather than just coming up with, I've come into this room with my hat of CEO, or I've come into this room with my hat of the designer. How are you coming into the room saying, actually, I'm bringing some of Joe, I'm bringing some of Sasha, like, because that is what I'm bringing today is me. And I think when we're giving a gift to the world when we show up more as ourselves. It's honest and it's clear with people, but it's also, we're all gifts, and I think when, feedback is also a really great way of people helping with that, giving people feedback, not just on, you did this particular thing well, you executed this part of your job well, but you bring real sunshine to my day, or you're someone that always has brilliant ideas. You're someone that has, it's the qualities of you. It's not just your me, is something that I think is a little thing that we can all do. I was just saying before we got started that we run a weekly challenge, and each week you can sign up to receive a little weekly challenge. And this week it's all about impact, because we've just released our impact report for our big January challenge. And so the challenge is to have an impact, make an impact on someone, do something nice, and I think for me, that's about, it doesn't have to be about serving that person. It's also about, think about the impact that you have. Think about how, when you show up as you and you can be brilliant, how you kind of radiate around you as well.
Yeah. And I love the idea of being more yourself. Like, I feel like it does sound a bit cliche, but there's no other way to say it. And I often say it as well when people ask me, well, what do you mean when you're talking about confidence? And if I join the bond, what am I going to get out of it? And it's like the goal is always to be more of you. It's like being even more yourself is such a powerful thing. But I imagine another thing that our worlds have in common is the blockers to this. Like, I feel like we're tapping into, like, our faces are all shiny, and it's like it's great. We both can really connect with why and how creativity in its broadest sense is such a powerful, magical force in the world. But there is so much in the way. There is so much in the way. There is so much fear and shame and self-sabotage, self-doubt, procrastination. I guess what Stephen Pressfield would call it all, resistance. And how do you, that's a big part of what we do at UPFRONT, is helping through tools and knowledge, but also very much through community, like helping women. It's not about getting rid of that resistance. I don't think you ever get rid of it completely, but it's about learning how to take the action despite those feelings, and learning how to put more emphasis on what you and maybe a select few other people think of you and your work, rather than ruminating on what everybody I went to school with and my mum's best friend's vet might think. So how do you and the team at 64 Million Artists help people go through that fear?
Yeah, so I'd say that sort of the two main things that I always think in combination with each other is, one is about small action. So just doing something little for 5 minutes, or for me, like you said, yesterday had a rubbish day, hadn't been sleeping. I just woke up feeling so anxious. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. And yet I just said, I'm going to make lunch. That's the thing that I can do today. That's my kind of creative act. And once I'd started that, the rest of my day got a lot better. And before that, I kind of lent into thinking I'm just going to stay in bed until then. And I think the other thing is bringing people together. So small actions and small connections, because whether that's in a Facebook group through the January challenge, or we have these, we bring sort of specialist groups together in WhatsApp groups, or in person, we do workshops, but also we run, big leadership cohorts where we'll take sort of 24 people through a course together. And I think that's, again, a lot of where the magic is taking small actions on your own, seeing that sort of validation of feedback come from other people without it being critique, without immediately critique and change, but actually I suppose what I think in those small actions is it's like tiny manageable amounts of vulnerability, rather than I don't have to bear my
micro vulnerability.
For me, all of it is about making vulnerability manageable. Because again, we can all talk about, you've got to bare your soul and be who you are, but actually that's terrifying. It's really scary, and it's also exhausting.
It's absolutely exhausting.
Whereas, a little 5-minute creative challenge that talks about, I always use this example, but one of my favorites is, tell a story of something you've lost, and then the choices for someone is you can talk about losing your keys, or you can talk about losing your partner, or you can talk, and actually that's your choice, but it gives you a chance to kind of lean into something and lean into where you are, and to share what you want, what you're willing to share. And that, again, it goes back to that idea of talking about practice, trying 5 minutes a day, trying to then share that with someone else, having that fed back, having that heard and seen, and then doing some more, to me is about, is a kind of a practice of developing your creativity and your confidence.
And how do you, what's your kind of practice for being a person, because you run an organization, run a team, you're very visible, putting your ideas out into the world regularly and often. Like, what's your relationship with that fear and the vulnerability, and being able to be that way consistently?
I think for me, it's one of the things I'm learning about is confidence in the fear. Does that make sense? So basically, I find it easy to show up being confident when I'm, I am confident in my work. I'm sometimes confident as a parent. I'm relatively confident as a friend. But I think one of the things for me is the practice has been around kind of learning to be confident in who I am when I'm off, when I'm just me, when I just want to do something for me, so for me, a lot of the practice has been around, one of the things is really interesting is that having an organization that runs these daily challenges is really helpful because it kind of makes you feel like you have to do it. So it's kind of being forced into that kind of, oh yeah, actually this stuff really works. It's actually really good. But also that that on those days when it's harder, when everyone's screaming in the house and that it doesn't feel like there's much creativity, to kind of think about sharing that. Again, I think for me, one of the things, I'm very happy to come on a LinkedIn Live and talk about my vulnerability. Am I as good at it when yesterday, when someone's saying, do you want to come out for a coffee? And I'm saying, actually, no, I just want to be on my own. That for me, that is the practice. It is like remembering to let people in on the more difficult stuff, the stuff that's tricky. I've I've done this stuff for a long time. I'm very happy talking about my mental health and my confidence in myself. But for me, it's that sort of daily practice of then, because I've done that, because I do it in the public, to remember that I can still do it in private and still kind of let people in that way. And I think, and also making space for my own creativity, and that means making time for me, whether that's just going for a walk, whether it's doing some writing, whether it's reading some new things, which as a parent of 2 very small children and running a business and, is hard, really hard. But it's kind of, I'm realizing more and more how essential it is, even if it is literally 5 minutes a day. If I don't do it, I sort of fall off a cliff.
Yeah, I relate to lots of that. I think we're similar in that way, where there's almost I find comfort in sharing with, kind of boundaried vulnerability, because there's a thing for me where I think, well, that was really painful, but it's not gone to waste because like now it's out in the world, and I've had like 10 people say, wow, that really helped me, or that thing of, it's like it feels like a gift to share some of that. And obviously you learn and grow yourself, so I think the hard bits are always a gift, even though it's really hard to remember that when you're in the trenches. But yeah, I think for me, moving to Sweden has had a really significant impact on my creativity and my mindset. And I think that's mainly to do with spending more time outside and being around nature in a way that I just never was before. And I think there's something about that makes these small pockets of time, whether it's just 10 minutes to read a book or sketch in my notebook, and also like lots of the business stuff that I do feels super creative and exciting. It's like that feeds my creative, whatever that need that I have is to like, I love making things and starting new things, and I've learned to, rather than run away and like go start another project somewhere, it's like, how can we build that within upfront? Like, let's start a podcast, or let's start I've started a new program with our global bond community, which today, actually every Tuesday, we have a 30-minute hot seat, where a bit like this, where a bonder will show up with a challenge and the others are in the room to kind of listen and support, and it's 30 minutes. But I just love it. Like, it fills my cup and gives me so much joy and energy. And I think on the days where it's too much of the, I guess, the more very logistical, practical work, it's emails and spreadsheets and numbers, like those are the days where I can feel like drained and demotivated. And that's why those moments of taking a walk or listening to a good podcast or connecting with somebody who can spark that in you feels even more important.
Definitely. I think these are the sort of chats that I'm trying to make more time for, not always publicly, but that idea of often women, like connecting with other women that I'm finding doing really interesting things, but also men and non-binary people and all sorts of interesting people that I've met over the last few months. But I think I stop doing that when I'm busy. I think, oh, that's the extraneous stuff, that that stuff can wait. And actually that is the absolutely important, the most important thing to keep doing is the inspirational stuff, because that's what keeps you motivated, keeps you thinking about what the purpose of what you're doing. That's, I think that's often a thing, isn't it? We leave to the end, whereas actually if we put it first, everything else gets much easier.
Yeah. So centering your inspiration support network.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait until you want to quit and you resent everything.
Exactly.
That's what can happen. It's like, oh, I'm just not feeling this anymore. It's like, well, when was the last time you went to a talk, or took part in a seminar, or did something to feed your, I think sometimes I feel like, gosh, I would love to go to an event that somebody else had organised. That would be so nice.
Yeah, totally.
Person at the front having to hold the, and do all the preparation and the promotion and the hosting. And but yeah, I mean, I feel like we could talk all day. There's so many parallels, I think, in terms of how confidence and creativity are connected, but I think also, and where we're both at in our journeys, and how we're thinking about leadership and showing up for ourselves and our team. So it's been a real joy to spend some time this morning with you. I'm going to encourage everybody listening to go to 64millionartist.com and check out the weekly challenge. There's lots of prompts on there, lots of exciting, useful resources that you can have for free and start to implement. And of course, want to remind you all that Bond 7 is starting next Monday. This is UPFRONT's 6-week international confidence course and community. I think over 400 of you have signed up to be part of it. It is an online program where you will have your relationship with your confidence and the confidence of the people around you transformed. You will learn to love the thing that you are very scared of doing right now. You will find your people and you will 10x your confidence. And if you go to weareupfront.com, you can get your ticket. It all happens online. Everything is recorded. We are doing an FAQ Instagram Live this afternoon. So if you're on the fence and you have last minute questions, you can hop over to our Instagram and listen there. So we would love to welcome you. If you are an artist, a creative, if what Jo and I have talked about this morning resonates with you, we have lots of artists in our community who are on this journey of connecting with their courage, their confidence, putting their name to their craft in a way that is bold and proud. So we would love to have you. And yeah, thank you so much, Jo. I hope you have a lovely rest of day. And I'm looking forward to part 2. We must talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Lauren. Lovely to chat to you.
Bye.
Bye.